So we're going to go ahead and get started with our Microsoft Copilot AI webinar. So again, as we get things kicked off today, we certainly do appreciate you attending our webinar today. And this will be the first of many that we will be doing over the course of the next few months and going forward from here. So what are we covering today? So again, we're covering Microsoft Copilot. Who's going to be covering that specifically? Well, first and foremost, my name is Chris Montgomery. I'm the Director of Sales here at ThrottleNet. In addition to myself, I also have with me Aaron Oliver, our Cloud Solutions Manager and somewhat resident expert as it relates to all things Microsoft 365 and Copilot AI. So it's good to have you joining us today, Aaron. Thank you so much. Cover the features and integrations of Microsoft Copilot AI. We're going to talk about the business benefits, not only to the business owner, but also to what it means to your business in general. We'll get into a little bit about what users are saying, how to get started with it. We'll talk in terms of pricing, and then we'll get into a Q&A and answer, hopefully to the best of our ability, any questions you guys have about the Copilot product itself. So with that said, when you guys do submit your questions, make sure you use the Q&A button at the top ribbon, if you will, across your Teams bar, as opposed to the chat, because that's where we actually take in the questions and provide some insights and answers from there. So we're going to take just a moment here to stop sharing and just kind of bring it back again for a moment here. So give us a second to do so. And at this point, hello, everybody. Again, my name is Chris Montgomery, Aaron Oliver, our Cloud Services and Solutions Manager here talking Copilot AI today. So Aaron, as we get started, let's just talk briefly here about why we're even having the conversation. I'll kind of kick that off and then we'll segue to a few questions. But the reason that we're having this discussion today is because day in and day out, I talk to business owners, we as an organization talk to business owners and their employees about different ways that they can be more productive and efficient. Everybody is looking to do more with less. They're looking to, say, reduce or maintain headcount while actually getting a little bit more benefit from their employees or more productivity and efficiency. So the reason that we're talking about Copilot AI today is because that is one of the easiest ways via solutions that you already have access to that you can essentially become more productive and efficient in your day-to-day operations and ultimately do more with less. So throughout today's discussion, you will actually see through a few different demos of different applications that we've brought into the equation exactly how that works. And you can see without question how it can make your life a lot more efficient and productive day in and day out and take a lot of the menial tasks off of your desk and ultimately put them in the hands of Copilot AI to handle that for you. So as we get started, we'll just kind of defer to Aaron for a moment here. Aaron, let's talk a little bit about Copilot in general. So what specifically is Copilot?
Yeah, Chris. So Copilot is, you can think of it as a digital assistant.
Okay.
It's something that Microsoft has released. They built it on the ChatGPT-4 platform. So
Okay.
on the back end, it runs the same AI engine that anything that's ChatGPT based runs. But they've kind of tied it down to your Microsoft 365 business tenant. So what it is it's a personal assistant. It'll allow employees to become experts in different Microsoft 365 products without having to know all the ins and outs or the minutia that comes along with that. So you can literally ask Copilot to do some things for you in Excel for visualizations, PowerPoint, presenting presentations, creating content in Word, summarizing your calendar. So you can take a lot of those tasks that we all start the day with and ask Copilot a few questions on one of your applications and kind of get a bullet list of, hey, here's my to-dos for the day. Here's this, here's that. But it can also assist in creating content. So no longer do you have to have a personal assistant say, hey, I've got this sheet. Can you go create me an executive summary? I can ask Copilot to do that and it'll kind of dump that out. So you can really think of Copilot as your right-hand man and a way to be more productive within the Microsoft 365 suite of products. So
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So are there multiple variations of Copilot that exist out there?
Yeah. So to avoid any confusion, like today, we're going to be discussing Microsoft 365 Copilot for business. There's also a Microsoft 365 Copilot for personal use, and it's a little misleading because Microsoft calls that Copilot Pro. So if you have a home or family edition of Microsoft 365 that you guys use and you want Copilot to use for your home account in your everyday life, you can do that too. It's called Copilot Pro, not to be confused with Microsoft 365 Copilot for business. And even within the business realm, there's a few extra licenses you can buy if you're a Dynamics user or if you've got a big Salesforce. There is Dynamics, or there's Copilot for Sales, for Dynamics, or for even Salesforce users to get some utilization out of that go above and beyond the normal Copilot functionality. There's a bunch of flavors, but we're going to kind of specifically talk about Microsoft 365 Copilot. It's kind of that entry level. Here's your personal assistant, and it's for all of the built-in Microsoft 365 suite of products.
Got it. Okay. And then just for a moment here, I mean, how does, at a high level, obviously not getting into the detail, but how does Copilot work?
So Copilot is, like I said, it is your digital assistant, but it operates in a way where you can ask plain English questions and get very technical output from your Microsoft 365 products.
Yeah.
You know, and we'll go into this in some demos later.
Okay.
And there's probably 100 demos we could have done.
Yeah.
But when it comes to say Microsoft Excel, you can ask Copilot in plain English,
Okay.
you know, tell me some information about this spreadsheet or this, 27 columns of data that has a million rows.
Yeah.
I need some summaries or I need this. And asking it in plain English in 1 or 2 sentences, Copilot goes out and does all the formulas, creates the visualizations, and then returns a summary of that data for you without having to have somebody go analyze it and bring it back to you. So
Excellent. Okay.
It works by breaking down all those really technical things and making it as easy as asking a question in plain English. So
Interesting.
Yeah.
So again, for the lay user, this is why it's ideal, because again, it's all plain text. You just key in what you want it to do, and ultimately it handles the rest. So let's look at some examples then of how we've been able to leverage Copilot, because I really feel as if the best way to illustrate exactly how effective this solution is to let people see how easy it is to use. So give us a couple of minutes here and we'll do a quick share and get this going. And we'll need to move ahead a little bit on things, but one moment. So guys, as we get started here, we'll start off with this example. So Aaron, again, you were alluding to Excel a moment ago, and I think that's a perfect segue into what we're talking about right now. So we created an example of just an Excel doc that you probably create every day in your business, including some information, in this case, some pivot tables. But Aaron, I'll defer to you. Please fill in blanks on that and exactly what the output is and all that good stuff.
Yeah, for this example, Chris, we just used it's a real simple table. It's got some costs, some values, some different things for a couple of different products for a company. It's a really small, example, as you can see.
Yeah.
But we asked Copilot to take this data and give me a pivot table showing a couple of the data points.
Okay.
And if, most of us are not Excel gurus. I know I'm not.
No, not at all.
But if you in your business, you've got a couple guys that are really good at Excel, and you always take this stuff and say, hey, can you go make something for me here? Or you hire somebody to do those kinds of things. This takes somebody who's a basic user in Excel and allows them to do things like create pivot tables or visualizations within Copilot. So if we go to the next slide here, you can see I basically asked it, can you create me a pivot table? And it said, yes, I can. What do you want to do with it? My next question in plain English was, add this to a new sheet. So it created a new tab within my workbook and dropped a summary of that table data with the columns that I asked it to summarize. And then it also created a visualization for that. So you can see that there's a lot of power there. And it took me about 15 seconds to do this, as opposed to, maybe an hour or so if I know what I'm doing. And if I don't know what I'm doing, maybe 2 or 3 hours,
Yeah, exactly.
to fumble your way through this in Excel. But if this was a bigger spreadsheet with, hundreds of rows or columns, and it was sales information for my company, instead of having to go to an accountant and say, hey, can you go in and run this report or that report? If I've got an Excel spreadsheet of my P&L, I can say, hey, what was my earnings for first quarter? What was my revenue? What was my margin? And if all that data exists in the table, it can return that information for you. And then you say, put that in a graph for me. Now it creates a visualization, and someone as an end user who is not, prone to making big presentations all the time can take this data and create an executive summary for your boss or for shareholders or owners, whatever the case might be. And you can do it in just a few minutes instead of being an all day or a couple of days to get back some of that information. So
needless to say, though, too, if you're in an environment where you need to present to a board or a C-level team or executive team or something to that effect, you can make some very cool graphics and charts and pie graphs and things of that nature within Excel to really illustrate your point, but without the need for all that additional education around exactly how Excel works and how do we create all these graphs and charts. Again, plain text format, just key in what you want it to do. And the output comes out. So again, if it doesn't work, just tell it to do it again with a slightly different variation, and they'll give you another iteration of it, correct?
Right. Yeah, you can say, I don't like the way this graph looks. Please change this, add this color, remove this, and it'll basically output the data in just a couple of seconds usually. So
now keep in mind, as we go through these different examples, guys, Copilot, and to Aaron's point earlier, we could have done demos for days on all the different aspects of what this solution can do. We just wanted to focus on some very high level elements today to give you some insight as to what it's capable of and how powerful it can be and how quickly it can turn something around for you. But again, this is extremely powerful with a lot of capabilities, and it's very intuitive as well. So with that said, let's talk a little bit then about Copilot in Word. So giving an example here, Aaron, why don't we talk a little bit about what we typed up and how we got to this point in the first place. So we just open up a Word document.
Yeah, so I opened up a Word document, and if you have a Copilot license, there will literally be draft with Copilot button right in the body of your document
Yeah.
to start off. And so
Okay.
I click this button, and you can see from this example here, I asked it to draft a white paper on the topic of Copilot, how it can be used to move your business forward.
Yeah.
And when I did that, it actually started recommending what my next sentence should be based on, what it thinks I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And you can see here, there's some bright white text there. And that's what I actually typed in, or I let Copilot add for me.
Yeah.
And then you can see some text in gray there. It's saying, hey, would you also like to include testimonials from industry leaders? If I'd hit tab, it would have added that next sentence and then maybe recommended something else.
Yeah.
But you can see 2 or 3 sentences. I wanted a white paper on this document. I wanted to focus on the integration with existing tools, include some real world examples. And in doing that, 3 lines of text. Yeah.
And if we may for just one moment, guys, because we didn't take a second just to throw the graphic up on screen. But if you're looking for Copilot in any one of the applications that you use, you'll notice in this window that we have open right now that shows the draft a white paper, right next to that is kind of a rainbow configuration or emblem or logo of some kind. That is the Copilot logo. So essentially, if you ever want to use Copilot and you have access to it and you're in any one of your applications, if you see that up in the upper right-hand corner, wherever it happens to be, you can click on it and therein lies your Copilot. You'll actually open up a window off to the right-hand side and Copilot will start asking you questions about what you want to do. So forgive me for that. Just wanted to make mention of that so that everybody knew what exactly Copilot looked like within the applications they're using. So if we want to move ahead, Aaron, what was the output then with this?
Yeah, so that three sentence prompt popped out a 3-page kind of executive summary document. And the things that I asked it to do, it highlighted those with headings. It gives it a title, kind of a subtitle, and then it even gives the document an introduction. It breaks it down into sections based on what I asked it to do.
Yeah.
And so it really kind of does an entire document for you. And if I had to go out and research some of this stuff and go look it up, I may have spent half a day drafting the first draft of this document.
Yeah.
So everything that Copilot does isn't going to be perfect, but it threw out a 3-page document that is 90% of what I need.
Yeah.
So now instead of spending the entire day doing this, I can go back, I proofread this. I say, you know what, I'd like to say this, or I could say that. And whenever you have Copilot do this, I can highlight any section of this and say, rewrite this section with Copilot and say, please rewrite it and give this a more business touch, or rewrite this and make sure that it is in a format that would address a C-level at a company or a salesperson at a company.
Yeah.
So you can actually have it change the tone of a paragraph or an entire document based on who your audience is. And so you can kind of feed that and continue to reprompt and change some of the things. But as opposed to having to take an entire day to write a document, I did it in 30 seconds.
Right.
And I might edit it for a half hour and call it good. So how much time does that save me in the course of a day?
Oh, yeah.
So
I mean, especially when you talk in terms of the research aspect of Copilot,
Right.
I mean, you could spend days just trying to compile all that information together and then make a determination on what's important and relevant and covered in a discussion like this.
Yeah.
So with that said, absolutely understood where we are as far as that's concerned. Let's talk a little bit about PowerPoint. Now, I'll just preface this by saying, although today's PowerPoint had the combination of people plus Copilot AI, the originating source for it was essentially Copilot. So we figured the proof is in the pudding, right? So let's make sure that this product and solution works the way we're describing it to folks. So we went ahead and asked it, based on an outline that I had built of our discussion for today, to go ahead and create an actual PowerPoint slide deck for me. And it output probably about 20 slides for me today. And then we can go in and make the edits and otherwise. So Aaron, I'll defer to you a little bit on that and just talk about that. Because again, I kind of let the cat out of the bag. But in this example, what did we do here?
Yeah, so in this particular example, and this is something important, Copilot kind of looks at all of the documents or things that you've worked on within your Microsoft 365 environment, so anything you've saved in your SharePoint or your OneDrive, any of that kind of stuff. So in this example, I took a small document that I wrote for the account management staff here at ThrottleNet on when to move a client to the cloud, because that's not always something that is the best option for every client. It's kind of case by case. And then different types of cloud, whether it's a hybrid cloud, an all cloud, a semi-cloud, and what those definitions mean to ThrottleNet from a sales perspective and even a technical perspective. So we can say, hey, this client is semi-cloud, and what does that mean? So this document just lays out what the definitions are, when we should move somebody to the cloud, and it's a Word doc.
Got it.
In this prompt, I said, hey, I would like to create a presentation from, and I did a / and it shows me a list of all my recent documents and all the documents I own. I clicked this document and said, from this document, and then I asked it to show when to move someone to the cloud and different client types. I just asked for that specifically. That one sentence prompt kicked out a 12-slide presentation that I could then take to my account management staff and kind of run them through what this document means, do a quick presentation for them. But it adds graphics, it adds an agenda at the beginning, it's going to add a conclusion at the end. But it kicked out a 12-slide presentation for me. And when it does that, I can also ask it questions or ask to make changes to this slide or that slide. But it takes, again, something that could take half a day to create this PowerPoint presentation. And in 30 seconds or less, I've got the base of my presentation. And now I'm just making some edits to what Copilot threw together for me.
And, again, it is black and white, but they did drop in some images for you. But to Aaron's point, now we're just going in and maybe adding a background and adding some colors and things of that nature. Proofing it. What I found historically is that when I've leveraged Copilot to create things for me, it actually almost gives me too much content. So I've got to go back and kind of trim it back a little bit to get it more concise and poignant and specific to the topic of discussion at hand. So with that said, again, this gives you an insight on how PowerPoint can be leveraged with Copilot. Also, again, to remind folks, if you look in the upper right-hand corner here next to where it says Create PDF, that is a prime example, again, of the Copilot logo up there. So again, if we're ever questioning whether or not we have Copilot or where we can find it, that is where it is located, at least in the example of PowerPoint, but it's in similar locations across all of the Microsoft suite of applications that are out there. Now, in this one is a little bit different. We're actually going to go through a video here. Aaron, I'm going to let you drive, but in this case, we're talking about how can we leverage, again, Copilot within Outlook. So again, it integrates fully with all of the Microsoft suite of products, correct, Aaron?
That's correct. And Chris, to preface that a little bit, when it comes to Teams and Outlook, those are kind of the first two products that Copilot got added to. So when it comes to maturity in the product, you're going to see the most use cases and the most benefit from Outlook and Teams. And like I said, we're going to do two quick little demos in Outlook here, and probably one for Teams that kind of crosses over into your calendar of Outlook. But these quick little demos that we're going to do are just scratching the surface of what's available in Copilot for you as a user. So
got it. So why don't we walk the
so in this example, I pulled up Outlook, I pulled up a new message, just said, hey, I'm gonna hit this to Chris. And you can see there it says type to draft with Copilot. So it's built in, it automatically starts doing that. So I click on that in this demo, and I had already kind of put together a short what I want this email to say. And the email was around our Copilot webinar and some things like that. So I threw just a small prompt in, and you can see that it pops up and asks you what we would like to draft with Copilot. You type this in, you hit the generate button, and when you do, it's gonna drop out some output within that screen. And you'll see after it generates the output for me, I'm gonna click on a little menu, and I want to change what it says a little bit. So when I hit that menu, it'll say, make it longer, make it shorter, make it more concise, change the tone. So I just clicked on make it longer, and you can see it added another paragraph to that email that I had. So I asked it about a sentence or sentence and a half, and it drafts a professional email on the topic that I had wanted to draft the email on. So if you think about drafting email in general, just the drafting portion, this can help you with a bunch. There's also the Copilot Coach, where you can type an email and then right click and say rewrite with Copilot, or you can say coach me on making this more business specific, and it'll start highlighting things, and you can pick which things you would like to edit to make your email sound more professional. Or if the AI came out and it sounded very robotic, because AI obviously is very robotic in some ways, you can say, please humanize this for me a little bit, or change the tone, just make it sound like this was written by, a 20-something employee, or I want to make this, sound like it came from a C-level, and I want it to concentrate on that. So you can change the tone of an email with just a couple clicks. So that's kind of the first example.
I laugh because I wonder what it would look like if one of my 13-year-olds started keying in, talking to 13-year-old tone. We'd be talking about Riz and Slade and a bunch of other stuff by the time we were done with this.
You could definitely have it change the tone to look like it came from a child, and kind of see some of that.
It would be illegible by the time it was all said and done, I would imagine. So moving ahead here.
So the next example that we've got for Outlook, I'll go ahead and just cue it up and start playing here. But with this example, basically, let's picture that you're out for, a week and you're coming back from vacation. You can ask Copilot to summarize your last week worth of emails or meetings or what have you. And since it lives in Microsoft 365, not only does it have access to all of your email, it's got access to your calendar. It's got access to all the meetings that you missed in Copilot or in Teams. And it can also look at like chats if somebody chatted with you. So you can ask for a recap of my last week. And this is what I did here. I said, hey, for the last 2 weeks, I'd like to have a summary of all emails, chats, and meetings about this Copilot webinar that I've had. And then I'd also like to know what are my to-do or my task list from that. And it goes through and reads all of that content, and it'll kick this out. So as you can see here, as this video plays a little bit, I give it just a quick little please summarize the last 2 weeks.
Mhm.
It does so, and it kicks out, and you'll see a bunch of output over here to the right.
Yeah.
And it's basically a link to every email, a link to every chat, and I can click on those, and it'll take me right to the app to that, so I can go read it in my own words or see it with my own eyes.
Yeah.
But it had a bunch of stuff in there, and the output was probably 3 or 4 pages long. So at the end here, I reprompted and said, hey, could you make my to-do list a formatted bullet point list?
Okay.
And now it takes all that data, and it's going to create just a bullet point list to drop out here for me.
Okay.
And so this is very powerful. And this is what I was talking about, maturity of the product. Whenever you're in Outlook, there are so many things that it's good at doing.
Yeah.
But summarizing your last week or saying, hey, I'd like to catch up on all the email I've sent back and forth with Chris Montgomery for the last month and a half.
Yeah.
It'll go back out and grab those and create you just a quick summary of what you've talked about. And maybe it helps you find something that had fallen off of your plate or things that you maybe forgot. So it can actually help keep you in line like a personal assistant would.
Sure.
And keep you on task for what you need to be working on for the week. So, I mean,
Sure.
Monday morning is, hey, what are my to-dos this week?
Yeah.
And it'll go back and not only look at your to-do app and things you may have flagged, but it may go find other things that you forgot to create a to-do for or a calendar item for and say, I don't see this in your calendar, but you had told Todd that you're going to do X, Y, Z.
Yeah,
So-
because you mentioned that in an email or somewhere else,
Correct.
but you haven't set aside time for it.
Yep.
So again, and for a lot of those folks that are out there watching today, I have no doubt in my mind that you've come back from vacation to an inbox full of 500 emails. And all you want to know is, what do I need to get to work on immediately? I'm going to scan those at some point in time, but for right now, I just need to focus on the task at hand. So again, that's where Copilot comes in. Have it go in, review all of that, create a to-do list for you. It allows you to go in, view those links if you need to go in and get more detailed information. But again, the idea being, take the onus off of you to spend countless hours sorting through 500 emails when you get back from vacation and just really get down to the nitty gritty of what needs to be done as soon as you return, and then take your time going through some of those emails and getting caught up on exactly what's going on out there. So as we continue here, we'll talk a little bit about how to use Copilot within Teams. Again, as we've talked about, and I keep saying over and over, it fully integrates with the entire Microsoft suite of products. So no matter what the product happens to be in Microsoft, it is going to have some sort of an integration with that and going to be able to offer some feature functionality to benefit you day in and day out. So Aaron, let's talk a little bit about Copilot in Teams and exactly how it works. This is probably one of the coolest features I've ever seen. So, I'll defer to you to talk about
again, that Teams maturity of the features in this product when it comes to Copilot. There's a ton of stuff you can do here. In this demo, you can see I've actually got my Outlook calendar pulled up, but I can do this in my Teams calendar as well.
Okay.
For this example, let's say I've got a meeting that I attend weekly, and for whatever reason, something came up this week, I can't attend that meeting.
Okay.
How cool would it be to attend that meeting without being there?
Yeah.
So with Copilot, and I'll start this example, but in Copilot, I go and look at a meeting that I've already accepted.
Okay.
And I change that accepted status to following. And if I follow that meeting, what's going to happen is Copilot's going to attend that meeting for me, record, transcribe it,
Okay.
and then it's going to send me a recap of that meeting. So you can see there, I just went from accepted to follow. And what's going to happen is, and I'll probably stop this video whenever it pops over and explain a little bit of this. It sent me the recap of that meeting after that meeting was over. And as you can see here on the screen, there is a video of the meeting right up above at the top, so I can see that. There are meeting notes created by AI. So it took the notes and broke down all these meeting notes. And if I scroll down here, there's quite a bit of notes that it took during this meeting. It was nearly an hour long. The other thing it does is right below the video, you can see it says chapters, topics, and speakers. So as this video progresses here in a second, I could actually skip to any of the sections of that video or that meeting by chapter that it laid out here and say, oh, I'm only interested in this part of the meeting, or I'm interested in that part of the meeting. So you can do a lot with that. And on top of that, I can then open Copilot and ask it questions about this meeting. So I'm going to go ahead and let the demo keep playing here so you can see as I scroll around or look at things, like I can see who spoke during the meeting and when they spoke.
Okay.
You can skip to those parts of the meeting right from those little links that it created. I've got my AI notes. And then the coolest thing is you can actually open Copilot, like you said, top right corner of most apps, there's a little Copilot button. I'm going to click that in this demo here in just a second. And I can say, hey, summarize this meeting for me. And you'll see all the output that it puts out whenever I hit summarize the meeting. It summarized the entire meeting.
Okay.
But then I can ask it other questions like, hey, what were my to-dos? Or what was John's to-dos? Or what was Chris's to-dos that came out of this meeting? And you can even in this output here, and I'm scrolling through it kind of quickly, so you can't see all of it, but at the end of this, I actually wanted to know the tone of the meeting. Hey, was there anybody upset in this meeting? Copilot responded, I didn't have enough information to see if anyone was upset. However, John did express some concern about the fact that someone put a ticket in his name on the board without escalating it properly. And it basically said, it could tell John was upset about this one topic, but you can actually not attend a meeting that you should normally be a part of, and you can ask for the tone. Was there anybody unhappy? What was the tone of the meeting? It'll tell you that it was jovial or that it was, kind of dismal and dour, and everybody was kind of aggravated. But then you can ask it more questions about who specifically expressed concerns, what they expressed concerns about. So AI can tell from the video recording and the transcription what all was going on, and you can get a lot of insight from that meeting. So
interesting.
Sometimes you might get more insight from Copilot than you did if you were in the meeting itself, because you didn't realize that somebody may have used a tone that was maybe upset or what have you.
Makes
so
sense.
The other thing that it can do, and I don't have a demo of this, but you could see that meeting recap and how you can ask for a summary. When you're in a live meeting, you can open up Copilot on the side. Nobody else in the meeting can see that, but you're talking to Copilot during the meeting. And if you're running a meeting, you can use this to keep you on track, because you can say, hey, what was the meeting agenda, or what have we not talked about in the meeting agenda? And it'll say, hey, you've already talked about X, Y, and Z. These 3 items were on the agenda. You haven't discussed that. And you can say, are there any unanswered questions? So if you were talking about X, Y, and Z, and Lindsay asks a question during the Y discussion, it can come back and say, hey, Lindsay asked this question and nobody ever responded or answered this question. It's still hanging out there. So at the end of the meeting, you can use it to kind of circle back and kind of recap and figure out, is there anything else that anybody asked that they're not getting what they needed out of this meeting, to make sure you're not wasting your time in meetings, and to help keep you on point. So how many times do you get in a meeting and it goes way off the rails?
Sure.
So you can use Copilot, and if you do so religiously, you kind of get used to asking it questions or helping me stay on topic. So there's a ton of maturity in this product and how you can use it.
Excellent. So be mindful, guys, that if you do want to have that feature functionality and being able to summarize your meetings and your agendas and keeping it on task, that at the offset of the meeting, you'll need to actually turn Copilot on. What I mean by that is it doesn't just turn on by default. Usually you have to go ahead and turn on Copilot. It will pop up a little prompt that says, hey, you're turning this on. Do you want to let everybody know? You click, yep, I'd like to let everybody know. You'll choose what language you'd like to be in, typically English. And then from there, it's recording everything. It's taking stock of everything, and it can create and answer all the questions you've got. But again, just be mindful that you do need to turn it on.
Yeah, and that can be done when the meeting starts, or when you schedule a meeting, you can automatically transcribe and record this meeting. And then Copilot has access to that transcription and recording to be able to ask questions post-meeting.
Got it.
Yep.
And another cool feature, just for those people that are out there that maybe are like me, that are on a lot of calls and trying to understand, are they talking too much? Are they talking too little? What are the types of questions that are coming up? How do we address those questions and concerns? Teams can also help you with that. So it's actually done a little bit of sales coaching, for lack of a better way to put it, or presentation coaching, so that it could say, hey, look, are you stopping logically and asking questions? Do you have a good cadence? Are you talking too fast? Are you talking too slow? Are you allowing enough time for interaction and engagement with the folks that you're talking to? So it can even get into that level of detail to help you get better at presenting whenever you're working or utilizing Teams to do so. So again, very intuitive, very slick solution that does see and understand what you're doing and can help you to be more better in your day-to-day. So as we continue here, Aaron.
That's the same video.
Oh, sorry. So let's talk here briefly, guys, about benefits to business owners. All right. And I think that based on what we've said thus far, it should probably go without saying. So I'll kind of kick things off, but I can kind of combine these two. I'd say that increased productivity and enhanced productivity, I should say, and increased efficiency kind of go hand in hand. Wouldn't you agree, Aaron? Yeah. So, what we're talking about here is reduction of time. So a lot of menial tasks, right? And going in, and I got to go out and do all this research and due diligence to be able to create this PowerPoint. Then I've got to go in and start creating the text and an outline. And then I've got to go in and build out all my slides. Then I've got to go in and put all the backgrounds. Or you can just bypass all of that and ask Copilot to go out and do it for you. Or you can just create an outline and say, here's what I need, and it'll do the rest of the work for you. So again, given how much time I've spent on PowerPoints over my time in this industry and in sales in general, I mean, the amount of hours I would get back would just be unprecedented and paralleled. So another example might be, again, Excel. So again, if you're an expert in that, great, but most of us are not.
Yeah, I mean, Excel is one of the places, not only can it help you save time for creating your content or visualizing stuff, but how much analysis can it do for you in especially huge Excel documents? I mean, we do some work for some financial firms, and I know some of those Excel documents can be 20, 30, 40 sheets long. Each sheet has thousands and thousands of rows, and these guys are having to go in and create reports to pull data and analyze. Now, most of these guys have done this over time, so they've got templates that they use. But for somebody who doesn't know how to do that and doesn't have 10 years experience pulling these reports, I can just ask it some questions on one of these extremely complex Excel spreadsheets and have it kick the data out for me. So, and if the data's there and you've got, headers and columns and you've got it in table format, it can usually glean what you're looking for and get you pretty close to what you're looking for right out of the gate within a few seconds. Couple of reprompts and you've got it polished up to be presentable.
Yeah, yeah. So again, that's your better decision making via data-driven insights. So again, if you got all this stuff in an Excel doc or otherwise, to Aaron's point, as opposed to traversing a number of tabs across the bottom and trying to get all this stuff to come together, ask a Copilot to handle it for you, and it will do the rest. Improved collaboration. I think that this one is probably obvious because just as an example that comes to mind for me, hey, I can't be in that Teams meeting for some reason, but Copilot can be there on my behalf. So again, now we're collaborating. Even though I wasn't able to attend, I've still got my action item list. I still know what I need to be doing and otherwise. So again, it allows us to collaborate more efficiently and effectively, and also maybe puts us in a position where we're not trying to play that game of trying to figure out whose calendar and who's available at the time. Look, we can still have the meeting with 2 out of 3, and we'll record that and still create action items and everything else there. So, and then finally, Aaron, I'd say cost savings, and this is, in my opinion, at least due to headcount. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't have to have that Excel expert on staff anymore, if you're a mid-level manager and sure, CEO has a personal assistant, the next person down has a personal assistant, but you're a mid-level manager, and there's a crap ton of remedial tasks that you kind of get stuck in every single day.
Yeah.
How much of that can you automate with your Copilot license and the reduction in time there? So, I gave a couple of examples of creating a Word doc or creating an executive summary to hand to your boss.
Yeah.
Sometimes you might spend 2 or 3 hours doing that. With Copilot, you might be able to do it in 30 seconds and maybe 20 minutes worth of review. So if that saves you 2.5 hours and you compound that over 3 tasks per day, and then you compound that over a week or over a month, what's the W-2 savings for a business owner? But what's that time savings? What does that look like to somebody who's in a management position?
Right.
I'm now freed up to do 15 other things that I need to get to, where I'm not stuck doing these silly little repetitive tasks I feel like I should hand off to one of my team. I can just ask Copilot to do it. I take the output, review it, and send it on. I can do that 10 times better with Copilot or 10 times faster with Copilot than I would if I was just kind of bouncing through the emails myself or bouncing through the responses and replies myself. So,
and even if you did have an employee that you were deferring to for that type of work, I mean, their ability to go in and change the tone of something or what have you throughout going as far as Word docs and other things you might create. Again, it's very difficult for a person to do because they have a specific writing style or way that they do things. Either way, for Copilot, it doesn't care. It's very easy and intuitive. It can handle that. So let's talk about what it means for your business. I mean, I think we've harped on this enough that we talk in terms of time savings. So I don't want to belabor that. But again, I think it goes without saying, guys, it could save you a tremendous amount of time in your day-to-day operations. AI-driven competitive edge. Again, now you've got an actual AI tool that gives you data-driven insights that may give you a competitive edge. It can also allow you as an organization to do more with less. I know we've talked about that repeatedly.
Yeah.
But that in and of itself can be a competitive edge.
Correct. And if you're, most of our market or most of our target is small to medium businesses. That's what we usually work with. For those people that are in those, like I mentioned, a mid-level manager before, if you're at a small business, how many hats do you wear? Are you this or are you that? Do you take care of some of the financial stuff? Do you take care of management and schedules? Do you take care of this? If you do, this can allow you to not be an expert in any one of those hats that you have to wear, but you can use Copilot to draft or do things on the different pieces of your job that maybe you were asked to take over, but it's not what you specialize in.
Right.
And then it gives you time back to kind of concentrate on what you as a business owner or a manager or what you as a business are doing. It gives you more time to focus on your actual process or what you're putting out to the world. So you get to do what you do best more often and not have to worry about these menial tasks or hire a second person to do some of these when you can just knock them out in a short amount of time yourself. So,
well, and what it also gives you access to is the same or similar AI-driven insights that maybe were typically reserved for large enterprise industries that are out there. I mean, those organizations obviously have deep pockets and have access to a lot of this type of data and information that used to be that smaller, medium-sized businesses just couldn't. But now with Copilot AI, they have that ability to, again, glean that data and that information and make smarter decisions about how they're going to make changes going forward within the organization. Scalability, I think in terms of scalability is just not so much how the solution scales, but more importantly, because obviously you could add it to any user that's out there, But again, how you scale as an organization internally, do you need to bring in that extra person or that extra second person or whatever the case might be? Or can we scale up without the need to do that just by leveraging something like Copilot AI? So again, doing more with less. And then last but not least, and I'll defer to you on it because you're the one who ran all the demos, but I think that most would agree that hopefully what they've seen today indicates how user-friendly this is.
Yeah, like I said, it's all kind of a plain English prompting setup. So there's not much technical about it. If you're already familiar, with your Word, your Excel, your PowerPoint, and even for somebody who's not, it makes creating some content in these different applications very easy. And some of the things we didn't talk about today, like Power Automate, for instance. If your company uses Power Automate to automate processes, like I received an email, I want to take the attachment out, I want to strip it out, and I want to drop it in a SharePoint or a OneDrive file share. You can use Power Automate to do all that. Well, a lot of people hire Power Automate developers just to do that. Now with Copilot, if you have a Power Automate license, you pop in and you say, I'd like to see every email coming from this person with this attachment. I want to strip the attachments. I want to move the attachment over to the SharePoint site, and then I want to mark this email as read and move it to an archived folder. It'll pop up and spit out that entire workflow without you having to know the Python, without you having to know the Power Automate platform and the dragging and the dropping and the setting of things. And it'll spit out the thing for you so that you can just maybe go back and check the variables or check some settings in it. And as an end user, it gives you the ability to create now and to automate. So
very cool.
There's a lot of power everywhere in this. But when it comes to being user friendly, it takes all these really technical things that you would normally have to outsource. Some of it can be brought back in-house for your end users to accomplish.
And what I'm hearing also is, Aaron, there's not a lot of sitting around training people on this because ultimately it's all about how they want to phrase their questions. So these days, I'm getting more and more the sense that it's about the question and no longer about the answer, right?
It is. And it's the same, paradigm that we had a few years ago when everybody said, Google it,
Right.
How strong is your Google skill? Well, the better questions you learn to ask in Google, the better the response you get. Same thing goes here when it comes to prompting. Prompting can kind of become an art. And you start with a prompt and then you get back some data and you say, you know what, I'd like to see this or this. And so what used to take you 5 or 6 prompts to get everything you wanted, now when I go to prompt for something in Copilot, I know, hey, I want this. I know I want it to ask it to format in a readable list. I also want to ask it to make sure that it tones it this way. I also want to make sure that I ask it to add a summary at the end. So that instead of me saying, hey, create this Word document, and then it comes back and creates it, and I say, okay, now do this. And I do one thing at a time. I've learned that with my prompt, if I put 5 or 6 points in my prompt, AI is smart enough to go out and grab it and do everything I wanted first shot. And then it's a lot less revision or a lot less talking back. But it's literally a conversation with the AI chatbot. So,
Which in and of itself is terrifying and pretty cool all at the same time, right? So, understood. So let's talk about what users are saying out there very briefly, guys. I think that we've kind of driven into this as we've had our conversation today, but these surveyed users are really surveyed during the test phase. So these numbers I would expect will continue to go up as time goes on. For those test groupings, though, again, 87%, I don't know how you couldn't say this, 100% across the board, saw that they had higher productivity, all right? In addition, 79%, again, at some point, I would say this will be close to 100%, are able to focus on more significant tasks within their organization. So again, to what Aaron and I have discussed, if we don't have to spend 4 hours doing due diligence and research in a PowerPoint presentation, that can allow us to focus on more mission critical aspects of our day-to-day positions within the organization, as opposed to finding ourselves caught up in just doing research and things of that nature, or extending our day by an extra couple hours to get that type of work done. And then last but not least, 1 in 3, which is shocking to me, but I guess it depends on their role within the organization, are saying that they've gained about 30 minutes. All right. I would expect, of course, as this becomes more mature, as the solution becomes more commonplace, as people understand how to do the queries and all that good stuff, you're going to see this number go up exponentially, not only with how many users saying they're getting the benefit, but what the amount of time that they're actually saving is going to be.
Yeah, and I think that's probably already higher. This is from Microsoft's, initial beta trials that they did with some large companies. The problem is how much user engagement did they get? And until somebody uses it and starts seeing the power, they don't think of what else they could be doing with it. I'm even guilty of that. Sometimes I start going through and doing something I've done for years, and all of a sudden somebody's like, hey, I asked Copilot to do that yesterday. And it's like, why didn't I think about that? So a lot of that comes into that. Also, I told you about the maturity in Word and Teams. That's where Copilot started. Up until just a couple of months ago, even the Excel version of Copilot was still in a beta. It was available publicly, but if you were using it, there was a lot of limitations to it, and they're starting to unlock a lot of those limitations. And so during this, people saved 30 minutes a day. 1 in 3 people said that, but they didn't have access to Copilot in all of the different platforms in the Microsoft 365 when
Okay.
this beta trial was going on.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
to save 30 minutes a day in, just Outlook or
Yeah.
just Teams,
That's
and
fair.
then you start dropping in Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Power Automate, some of
Adds
those
up
kinds of
quick,
things,
yeah.
it can add up. It can add up very quickly. So
Absolutely. Okay, understood. So let's talk a little bit about what we need to do to get started with things. So Aaron, again, you're the guy who sets these up, and you're the one who helps a lot of the organizations that we partner with to do this type of work. So why don't we talk a little bit then on what you need to be thinking about to get started with Copilot AI?
yeah, so when it comes to this, Throwdown can help look at this for you, but we really need to evaluate your entire security posture around Microsoft 365.
Mhm.
And what I mean by that is, Copilot is the most efficient if everything you do is in 365. So if you've
Right.
got some file servers on site,
Mhm.
the first step might be a project to move your file servers to OneDrive and SharePoint, something to that effect.
Yeah,
You can use Copilot without that functionality. You just lose some of the features like you saw in Teams or in Outlook. You can still do all of those things, Power
Yeah.
Automate. But if you wanted to take, 8 Word docs that you have in a file share and create a new executive summary based on those 8 documents,
yeah.
they have to be in OneDrive or SharePoint for
Okay.
Copilot to have access to it. So
Got it.
Copilot operates within the bubble of your 365 business tenant,
Yeah.
and it does that for security purposes.
Sure.
So we do need to evaluate your security structure, make sure that you have licensing for like things like Azure AD Premium, so we can do conditional access policies to control access. And then we probably just need to review, overall permissions on your granular shares that you have out in SharePoint, just to make sure that, Bill from our support desk doesn't have access to an HR share. He doesn't know that he
Yeah.
has access by accident. But with Copilot, if he says, hey, I'd like to know this or that, and it comes back and it grabs a file that's confidential out of HR share, you've just
Yeah.
opened that up to them. So it does require a little bit of,
Okay.
due diligence to look within and make
Yeah.
sure that you don't have anything open that shouldn't be.
Sure.
And a lot of times that'll be done by accident within an organization, or somebody says, hey, copy this user. Well, we copy that user and they had access to a share that they probably shouldn't have, but
Yeah.
nobody knows until they access an HR document years down
Got
the
it.
road.
Right.
Copilot has access to anything that each user has access to. So that's one of the
Understood.
big things to kind of bounce through.
Really to keep in mind. I mean, as far as the training your team is concerned, I mean, in my experience, I don't want to speak to for everybody, but I do find that just by playing with the application in and of itself, asking a question, seeing what the output is, following instruction and direction that it gives to you, again, being as intuitive as it is, that in and of itself could serve to accomplish and accommodate a lot of the training requirements for the application. Outside of that, my opinion is the training is where's the Copilot button? Okay.
Yeah.
Once we know where the Copilot button is, the rest, Copilot can kind of handle it, can guide us, give us insights and ideas around, again, to Aaron's point, say in the Word document, what we might want to include in there. So again, it's very intelligent in that way. Implementing gradually, usually again, starting maybe with a small subset of individuals within the organization that maybe are a little more technically savvy. But Aaron, what would you recommend as far as rolling that out?
Either some of your technical savvy folks or the folks that have a lot of these mundane menial tasks all the time, and maybe your management staff or your C level, so they kind of see, here's what we have, or maybe your sales folks or your marketing folks, because they're the ones creating a lot of content, right?
Sure.
So if you can hand it to the folks who are creating a lot of content or have the need to, reference old documents and create new documents out of it, if you can kind of pick 5 to 10 people within your organization that could use it, once they see how it works, you could roll it out organization wide. And then even, your entry level guys, once they know the power behind it and what they can do with it, it may benefit. And there may be some organizations where you don't roll it out across the board. You roll it out to your C levels, your management, and maybe targeted staff in different departments because of their need to create content or automate things. So, and that's something we can help you guys decide. And if you do kind of do a trial rollout, you can kind of roll it out to a few users and then just see how you like it. Like I said, most people who play with it end up learning a lot.
Sure.
As far as what
I
they
would
can
figure
do
as
in
much
365.
just by playing with it alone.
Yeah.
So, and then again, guys, as we're kind of running against time here, monitor how your people are performing, get some feedback, see how they feel about it, work to make tweaks and adjustments if we need to, and then continue to roll it out from there. So as we wrap up here, of course, the next logical question is, how much does it cost? So Aaron, I'll let you talk a little bit about to this. So the $30 that we see here, is that in addition to your Microsoft 365 subscription, or is that, how does that work?
Yeah. So Copilot right now is $30 per user per month for the 365. It does require you to already have Microsoft 365 licensing, whether it's basic, business standard, or business premium. We recommend moving toward the business premium, the enterprise level licenses, just so you have those Azure AD premium features for security purposes. With that being said, it's $30 per month. Right now, Microsoft is requiring a 1-year subscription, which is what they require for all of their licenses.
Yeah.
The difference with this is you have to pay the entire 360 up front. So
Okay.
if you've got 5 users who want to do it, you're going to be 360 times 5 for the initial launch, and those licenses are good for a year. So you do have to pay for 1 year up front. We have heard some rumblings that Microsoft is looking at adding it as a monthly feature. But as you can see, there's a lot of computing power that Microsoft has to add on the back end to keep up with the amount of people adopting Copilot. And so that is why they ask for that 1 year commitment when you buy the license, so that they can make sure that they're scaling up the back end that drives Copilot at the same rate in which Copilot needs are being driven by the end users. So,
got it. Okay, makes sense. So guys, we are going to turn off our screen share here for just a moment and really get into some questions. So again, as I had indicated earlier, if you go to the Q&A button up at the top, if you have any questions there, go ahead and plunk those in there, and Aaron and I, mostly Aaron, will do the best that he can to answer those. So give us a moment here to get our Q&A loaded up here and see what we've got going on here. So what do we have here? Okay, what kind of risk should we access before allowing employees to use Copilot within the 365 environment? So assess, I gather, is what we're asking for there. So again, I think we talked about that a little bit as far as what you need to be thinking about and what sort of risks you need to assess. But that would be, again, back to ensuring policy of least privilege, correct, Aaron? So
yeah, and like I said, a lot of that comes down to the licensing. I think Throttle kind of recommends at this point that, and Microsoft does the same, if you're using any kind of Copilot or any kind of license, that you want to have Azure Active Directory Premium. So it may require upgrading some of your licenses. Now, Microsoft doesn't require the upgrade, but from a security standpoint, and if you're somebody who has to worry about compliance anyway, most compliance audits in the next year or two will probably require you to have an Azure Active Directory Premium license of some sort, just to pass their insurance requirements or what have you. But Copilot's the same thing. And as far as what to assess, I kind of brought it up a little bit, but a big thing is going to be your Microsoft 365 groups and the permissions that those groups have to SharePoint shares. And you may even want to change some of your sharing options, like internally sharing only to specific people. Don't allow sharing links, like sharing an open link to people. So you have to share to individuals as opposed to links. There's a lot of little things like that we can recommend, but a lot of that would come during an audit if you guys wanted us to take a look at some of that. So
absolutely. It looks like I have another question here. When following a meeting, Copilot turns on automatically ? And the answer to that is no. You need to turn it on, correct?
No, it's
or so you can have it set up to
if you follow a meeting, it's automatically going to turn on transcriptions for that meeting. A caveat to that is that this meeting does have to be in-house, meaning if Chris and I were invited to a meeting that was housed in one of our clients' Microsoft 365, I might not be able to follow that meeting. But if we're hosting the meeting for that client, anybody from ThrottleNet who would follow that meeting would get that meeting recap. So Copilot itself doesn't have to be turned on in the meeting, but the meeting has to be transcribed and recorded for Copilot to give you the best recap. That being said, you can only record and transcribe meetings that are in your organization
that you have control over.
Correct.
So what I'm also hearing is, to be clear on that, it doesn't have to be an internal meeting. It has to be one originated by you. So if I'm meeting with, say, a client or a prospect, as long as I'm the originating source for the meeting, and anybody else that I want to have on that meeting that's part of ThrottleNet as an organization can or cannot participate by doing the follow. But again, if they created the invite on their side and sent it over to me, again, we're going to be limited. We're probably not going to be able to do that. So just be mindful that if you want the ability to leverage Copilot and the summaries and some of the things we're talking about today, you would be the originating source for that respective invite and sending that over to them. And then from there, you can turn on that feature functionality.
And from what I've seen from other products, I mean, there are other products that attend meetings for you, and Copilot will probably allow for that, so that any Teams meeting that you're a part of, you'd be able to transcribe. That feature is just not available yet, but it is for any internal meeting. And me as kind of a manager or head of professional services and head of our cloud solutions department, I host a ton of meetings with clients. And so, it really handy for those recurring meetings or things that you do internally. So
excellent. Great. Another question we have is, I noticed you're using Outlook on the web for the demo. Is that needed for Copilot, or can I use the desktop app as well, including the classic app?
Yeah. So the classic app has some Copilot features, but you really need to be using the new Outlook. And the classic app is basically being degraded. The new Outlook desktop app is effectively OWA just wrapped in a browser window to make it look like an application. So OWA versus the Outlook application, the new Outlook, are basically the same. And so all of those same functions and features work in the desktop app or in the OWA. So
Excellent.
I used OWA mainly because some of the demos that I was using, I was actually running from a Apple computer.
Okay.
And so my fat client on my Mac looks a little bit different than most of the end users that would be hitting this demo would be in on the Windows side. So I wanted to make it as least confusing as I could, but yeah.
Yeah, got it. Makes sense. When I have a Word doc open in the 365 browser, do you know where we'd find the Copilot icon there? Might have to get back on that one since we can't open it right now.
Well,
Or
no,
do you know off the top of your head?
yeah, the Copilot would still be at the top if you have a Copilot license. So
Okay.
the caveat there is you have to have a Copilot license. If you have that license, the Copilot button should be in both the web app and the FAT application.
Okay.
And then there's also whenever you add that outside of just being in the apps, we didn't really demo this much, but on your Microsoft 365 homepage, there's a Copilot button, just like you would go and open OWA or Word in a browser.
Okay.
You open Copilot in a browser and it actually comes up and has a bunch of prompts. And from that prompt, you could do things like say, hey, I would like to take the contents of this document / and find the document and the meeting notes from this meeting and actually reference a meeting in the past.
Okay.
And I'd like to also take any emails or chat history that I've had about this subject. And I would like to summarize all of that and target it at this particular client and make it an executive summary format. And it would take your meeting notes that you talked about, so it could gear it toward that client, a document that maybe you have on your standards, meeting notes, and even emails that you've received or sent to this client about this topic to make sure you don't miss anything that they are concerned, and drop that all into one executive summary. But you can do that from Copilot on the web, just without being in an app. So there's actually a separate Copilot app there, where you can kind of combine, and you can do that in almost any of the apps as well. It's just a little more user-friendly or easier to see when you do it on that website version. So
understood. And do we need to configure Microsoft 365 to allow Copilot to create MS Office docs?
No, whenever you enable Copilot, Copilot is enabled on a per user basis. So that per user license is going to allow each individual user to create content within the context of their Word, and it saves to their SharePoint or OneDrive locations that they have access to. So.
Got it. So guys, I think we've answered all the questions. Let's see if we have any further here. Why is Copilot licensing so expensive compared to our general 365 license? I don't know if you have an answer to that one, Aaron.
So, I mean, compared to other platforms, I can see that it's a little more expensive. Like if you buy Chat GPT, it might be $100 for the year or whatever that subscription is. But that's like a general AI, and it doesn't have access to like your
It's
files.
not integrated with all of that. Yeah.
So I mean, you can create content with some of those, but this is integrated into 365. It's secured within the 365 tenant that you have. So it's locked down to your tenancy. And two, there's a lot of hardware that goes into to driving the processing power that happens on the backside. And to make it happen as quickly as Microsoft does, they've invested a ton of money in hardware. So I think that's directly relative to the amount of hardware and resources that they had to put in to make Copilot available. Because just at this time last year, there was a beta, and they were going to release Copilot to companies in January of this year, and you had to spend $125,000 up front. You had to buy 300 licenses just to start. And you had to prepay a year for all 100 of these lights. So you had to buy so much Copilot to even dip your foot in the water to see if you liked it. It wasn't like, hey, can I trial this and test it? Nope. If you want to trial, you're dropping 100 licenses at $30 a month per, $360 per user, and it's one time. So they had such a rush of people asking to jump into Copilot in the small and medium business market that they finally said, okay, well, if you have business premium licenses, you can jump in. And within about 3 or 4 weeks, we heard the next announcement where, all right, it's open to anybody with business standard, business, whatever, but you still have to pay for a year up front. And I think there was a huge investment on Microsoft's side to do that. So I think that reflects the pricing, but I think they would also explain it that at $30 a month, if they save you 1 hour time a month, which from the examples you can see, even if I only use Copilot once a week, I probably save myself more than an hour. And at, our billing or W-2 rates, we're going to make that money back pretty quickly. So
makes sense.
The only reason you wouldn't is if somebody's not using it.
Got it. So guys, that kind of brings us to time. As we wrap up here, I'll do a quick screen share just to let you guys know that for anybody who works with us currently, if you'd like more information on Copilot, the cost, what we need to do to get you guys set up on it, by all means, talk to your virtual chief information officer, otherwise known as your VCIO. So they would be assigned to you and you know who they are. With that said, for those individuals that are on the line today who are not utilizing our services, but would like more information about Copilot or cybersecurity, support, and all points in between, by all means, reach out to us via our website at throttlenet.com and go to our Contact Us page, fill that out. And then from there, we'll get back in touch with you to schedule a time to have a more in-depth and detailed discussion around how we can be of service and assistance to you going forward. So we're, again, right at the hour at this point, or pretty darn close to it. So we appreciate all the time that you've given us today. We will be assembling this most likely and putting it back out there for folks that could not make it or that want to revisit this meeting. So by all means, check that out on our website as well. So again, for Chris Montgomery, myself, I thank you for your time. Aaron, thank you for yours as well.
Yep.
And we'll look forward to seeing you guys at our next webinar. Thank you so much for attending today.